Well, good morning and welcome back to another week on my allotment. And I think the first thing to say, and if you're in the UK you'll already know this, the weather is outstanding. It has been truly the most glorious week of unbroken sunshine, no wind. It's just been perfect. It's set to break next week, but you know, celebrate what you've got. Don't worry about what's to come because you can't change it. It's been absolutely splendid. The temperatures have been up near 20 degrees Celsius, and that's, you know, just enhanced the garden at home and the allotment. And it's Saturday, so the second thing I should say is the reason I'm not going to be here tomorrow is it's Mother's Day, and my wife and I and my son, his partner and our granddaughter are going out for a meal to celebrate Mother's Day. So I should say happy Mother's Day to my mother and to all mothers that watch this. You're absolute saints, most of you. So yeah, I've got all day up here. I got here very early, and I'm going to trickle along, you know, tick over, keep things moving. I mean, I've shown you on previous videos around the plot. It's pretty damn tidy, and everything's moving along nicely. The greenhouse really is kicking off now, and of course this wonderful weather can lull you into a false sense of spring is here, the frosts are behind us, you know, it's all summer ahead. We're not out of the woods yet, so I am still being slightly cautious with regard, you know, I haven't sown any cucumbers, courgettes, I haven't sown any of the squashes or any of the more tender stuff. I'm waiting until mid-April to do that before, you know, so I don't get caught out. But yeah, and of course, you know, celebrating what has been with the weather and this weekend, but slightly more importantly, in the week ahead, next weekend, actually Monday to be precise, my family will descend on the New Forest, as will my future son-in-law's family, and my daughter Charlotte is marrying Carl at a hotel in the New Forest, and I think we're all pretty excited about it. I've got 3 children, they're all adults, but Charlotte is the first to tie the knot. So, and of course being a daughter, it means I'm going to walk her down the aisle of sorts. I'm not quite sure what the aisle will be, but it's not a church. And I've got to make a speech. So that'll be interesting. So that's next weekend, so I won't be posting. The following weekend, we go away for our first trip in the caravan this year. And rather exceptionally, Charlotte and Carl, who will then be Mr. and Mrs. Gledhill, will be joining us in their VW camper van. So I won't be posting for it'll be 3 weeks before I post again, and hopefully I'll have a few clips of both events to show you. So you'll have to wait a while, but I think it'll be worth the wait. So anyway, I have been a little bit busy here this week. Let's have a look round at the small jobs I've been doing and the significant job I've got to do today. Just one job, and it's out the back of the shed, so let's go and have a look now. So one of the things I've been busying myself with over the last couple of days is I had sown some onion sets in the greenhouse, and last autumn I planted some onion sets out in this bed and that bed, and inevitably some of them haven't taken, they've rotted off, or they've been picked out, whatever, they've disappeared. And so in this bed and that bed, I've put the spring sown ones to fill the gaps. So now all the gaps are full. Somehow, miraculously, I had just the right amount to fill all the gaps. You know, life sort of works out like that, doesn't it? So that's one job I've done. Another job I've done is I've emptied a couple of my bottles of comfrey feed that I made last year into this tub. So as the sign says, this is pre-mixed. There's my stirring stick, and it's the only barrel I've done, and I shall use it as I see fit around the plot. And you may remember in the last video these two black recycling tubs I sowed with carrots, and I covered them over, and I've just uncovered them. So that's not quite 7 days, but it's near enough, and I won't be up for a couple of days, so I thought I'd do it now. And as there's no rain in the forecast, I'm not worried about the rain compressing and ruining the seeds. So we shall see in the next few days whether anything germinates. Very boring, but an absolute integral part of all allotments is lots of hoeing and raking, chopping the heads off the weeds. It's that time of year that, as well as your crops and seedlings growing, so do the weeds. So if you start early and do it little and often, they don't get a head start. So all the beds hoed and weed this week, right the way throughout the allotment. Something else I've done this week, you saw me sow a couple of rows of radish in a previous video, so I've sown 2 more, so that's 4 rows of radish so far. And the multi-sown spring onions that I started off in the greenhouse, I've put a couple of rows of those on the left hand side there. So the salad crops are on their way, and lettuces are coming on nicely in the greenhouse at home. Looking forward to having our first homegrown salad. This is the kiwi plant that I planted last year. Bought it at the local Chepstow garden centre, and for Willem, one of my subscribers, it is called Jenny. Now my understanding is that Jenny is self-fertile, so I only have the one plant. I'm pleased to see that it's survived the winter. It looks like it's in a pot. It's not. That's just the ring of the top of a pot that I've put down to contain the compost that I keep around it. It is planted in the ground, and it's looking really good. I hope this year it'll make a good growth up my little frame that I've made. Let's hope so. But yeah, that's as my understanding. I'll see if I get any fruit in the next 2 or 3 years. And I also brought the first sowing of pea alderman up. I got it out of the greenhouse because I needed space in the greenhouse for the next successional sowing. And these were sown from my own saved seeds. So I'm really pleased with that, and I shall do more of that this year. Now that I know if I keep them in a paper bag under the stairs at home, they germinate virtually 100%, I would guess. Very happy with that. And there's 2 more smaller pieces of guttering with more peas in under that glass, and 2 large bits of guttering like this in the greenhouse at home. And I've got 1 more to sow, and then as I put this one in the ground in a week or 2, I shall redo this piece of guttering so that we maximise our pea harvest, because you know it's one of our favourite crops. I think probably our favourite vegetable. Well, I endeavour to bring you something a little different and varied other than the allotment. So this week I have some mildly interesting facts for you, and we'll start off with teeth. Teeth are the only part of the human body that cannot heal itself. They are coated in enamel, which is not a living thing. Isn't that interesting? The only part of the human body that cannot heal itself. So every other part can. The Romans used to drop a piece of toast into their wine for good health. Hence why we raise a toast. Isn't that interesting? There's only 1 letter that doesn't appear in any American state name. Do you know which letter that is? I'll come back to that. Walt Disney holds the most Academy Awards. I don't think that's a surprise, is it? He won 26 Oscars and was nominated 59 times. That is truly astonishing, isn't it? Shows the quality of his work. Queen Elizabeth II is a trained mechanic. When she was 16, she was trained as part of the war effort, and she did work as an auxiliary mechanic. You know, is there anything that woman can't do? The actors who voiced Mickey and Minnie Mouse got married in real life. Wouldn't that have been hilarious if they'd done their vows? Forget it. Here's one for me. There is a word for someone giving an opinion on something they know nothing about. Never let it be said I wasn't afraid to give an opinion on something I know nothing about. An ultra-crepidarian. Well, I never knew that, and I should have done. Right, enough of the nonsense. Now, of course, we're on my allotment right now, but back at home we have an ornamental cherry tree in the front garden, and it started out about that big, and it's got to be nearly 10 years old now, and right now it is at its most beautiful, and I just can't help but show you a very small clip. Well, it's a tiny front garden, but right now it's a very beautiful one. The tree is buzzing. I was going to read a little bit from this book, The China Study, and I hope you'll bear with me. I think you'll find it interesting. When I first started this health thing that I've become interested in, started by sheer coincidence when we get our TV through BT, everything we get, the phone, the internet and our TV comes from BT, British Telecom. And by some fluke, I wasn't interested in it, but part of the package one year was Netflix. Well, I've looked through, you know, Netflix is it's not my cup of tea. Most of the stuff on there tends to be what I think of for teenagers, and that's probably what it is. But you know, when we first got it, I looked through and I came across a couple of documentaries on health, and one of them was called Fed Up. I remember that was the first one I ever watched. It was about these really unfortunate, my heart went out to them, to these fat children in America who are trying their utmost to get in shape, and everything's rigged against them. The health industry, the food industry, schools, they feed these children garbage in their schools. And of course the parents have no idea of what good food is, and so on and so forth. And it was a heartbreaking documentary, Fed Up. But in it, it mentioned milk, and it said the damage that milk does to our skeletons. And I stopped and I thought, no, milk builds strong bones. I've been told that my whole life. Turns out it's nonsense, it's marketing. And it's true that animal products, particularly milk, are acidic. And, you know, I did my own research, and it turns out that every time you consume something from an animal, it's acidic. Meat, dairy are acidic products. We are meant to be just slightly alkaline. And so whenever we eat animal products and consume dairy, milk, cheese, eggs, the lot, our body has to neutralise the acidity. And the way it buffers this acidity is with calcium. The only place the human body stores calcium is in its skeleton. So every time you consume an animal product, the human body takes a tiny microscopic amount of your skeleton and buffers the acidity and neutralises it. Well, of course, over the decades that you're alive, consuming all this cheese and meat and dairy and so on, it weakens the skeleton and destroys it. Which is why I mean, if you think, it's really obvious, isn't it? if you look around you, if milk builds strong bones, old people in Europe and the West would have incredible skeletons. They'd be like Arnold Schwarzenegger was when he was 25. You wouldn't get a broken leg anywhere in Europe. But of course, it's not true. The countries with the highest rates of dairy consumption have the highest rates of bone fractures. So I thought, wow, that's earth-shattering to me. That this thing that is completely accepted by society. Milk builds strong bones. Anyway, I'm waffling. I'm going to read you a little extract now from this book. And what I had to do is I had to get a mental shift that people in the health and food industry are not trying to make you healthy, lean and fit. They're trying to make money, and they'll do whatever it takes to make money. You know, why aren't we curing heart disease? Heart disease, we've known since the 1960s and 70s, is completely preventable, completely reversible and completely curable. Well, why aren't we doing it? Well, because it's done through diet and lifestyle, and there's no money in somebody eating well. So once I'd made that shift, you know, I've reconciled myself to the fact that these people haven't got your best interests at heart. They've got their bottom line. So, and this next chapter, or this couple of pages I'm going to read you, sort of explains that. And I should mention that the man called Caldwell Esselstyn, he's a bit of a hero of mine. I've seen him in various documentaries like Forks Over Knives. He was a senior cardiologist at the Cleveland Clinic, one of America's top heart surgeons, and he realised that for all the hearts, the stents and the bypasses and all that he was doing, those people that he was saving their lives in that moment, but they were dying a year or two later from the same heart disease they came in with. A stent is just like putting your finger in the damn wall. It's not cured the problem because a leak will occur somewhere else. Anyway, so bear with me, it'll take a couple of minutes and I hope you'll find this interesting. In March of 2002, Caldwell Esselstyn, and his wife Anne, whose grandfather founded the Cleveland Clinic, drafted a letter to the head of the cardiology department and the head of the hospital at the clinic. The letter started off by saying how proud they were of the reputation and excellence of the clinic and the innovation of the surgical procedures, but that everyone recognised that surgery was never going to be the answer to this epidemic of heart disease. Formally proposed the idea he could help set up an arrest and reversal dietary programme in the Department of Preventative Cardiology at the Cleveland Clinic. The programme would mirror his own and could be administered by nurse clinicians and physician assistants. Ideally, a young physician with passion for the idea would head the programme. Ultimately, every patient with heart disease at the clinic would be offered the option of arrest and reversal therapy using dietary means, which costs very little, harbours no risks, and puts the control back into the patient's hands. You'd think if an opportunity arose to profoundly heal sick people, and one of the most reputable people in the country was going to help you, a hospital would jump at the opportunity. But after being one of the star surgeons at the Cleveland Clinic for decades, after initiating a heart disease reversal study that had greater success than anything ever done at the clinic, and after graciously offering a plan to help heal even more people, wasn't even contacted. Neither the head of the hospital nor the department head had the respect to even acknowledge that he had written to them. They didn't call, they didn't write, they ignored him. 7 weeks passed and finally called the department head and the hospital head, and neither of them would take his call. Finally, after 7 calls, the head of the hospital got on the phone. This man had praised for years for his research and seemed excited by his results, but now he was singing a different tune. He obviously knew exactly what was calling about and told that the head of the cardiology department didn't want to do it. In other words, he just passed the buck. If the head of the hospital wanted it done, it would be done, regardless of what the head of cardiology wanted. So S called the head of cardiology, who finally took his call. The man was abrasive and rude. He made it clear he had no interest in what S was trying to do. S hasn't talked to either of these doctors since. And it goes on to say that he continues to hope that they will take up his offer, but of course they won't. It's all about that. Imagine if people were healed. You know, these cardiologists and these cardiology hospitals, imagine if they reversed heart disease. They'd be out of business. An interesting situation is now developing. Just as with Dr. McDougall, many of the clinic bigwigs with heart disease, isn't that interesting? A hospital dedicated to heart disease and the people running it have got heart disease. Shows you how much they know about it. Have gone to Esselstyn themselves for treatment and lifestyle counselling. They know it works and they seek out the programme on their own. S says, I have now treated a number of senior staff with coronary disease at the clinic, senior staff physicians. I've also treated a number of senior staff trustees. And so it goes on. But I think that's fascinating. Once you understand that medicine is an industry, you know, you can come to terms with it. You know, and of course a lot of people would have said, no, I don't want diet and lifestyle counselling, and I don't want to go on the programme. Just put a stent in and I'll be on my way, and I'll go back to eating my burgers and my full English breakfast. But that's, you know, that's really interesting. And I shall finish before you switch off. I will finish with another little update from my friend Brian, who is a subscriber on my channel and I'm in touch with on Instagram. He had a letter, and if you don't know, and I apologise if you do, I'm repeating myself, Brian has watched all of my videos, bless him, and I said in one of them, you know, don't trust me, don't listen to me. Why would you listen to me? I'm no qualified physician. Do your own research. Well, he did, and he's gone plant-based, and up to now, as far as I know, he's lost a stone, and he is asthmatic, and after a couple of weeks he stopped having to use he's gone plant-based. So he's given up meat and dairy and he's gone whole food, plant-based. After 2 weeks he could stop using his inhaler, purely through changing his diet. And a couple of weeks ago he was contacted by his doctor to say, we'd like you to come in and we'll review your asthma medication and make sure your prescription is as it should be. And Brian got back in touch with him and said, actually, I've given up meat and dairy, I've gone plant-based, and I don't need my asthma inhaler or prescription anymore. Thank you very much. And he said, if you'd like to give me a prescription for vegetables, I'll be only too pleased. His doctor hasn't got in touch again. You know, you would think, wouldn't you, that doctor would get on the phone to him and say, tell me, how did you do it? What did you do? And you don't have to use your inhaler anymore. I need to know this. No, not in, you know. Anyway, you know, you may find it interesting, or you may have already gone by now. The one job I've got to do today is the tubs round the back here, which I'll show you in a second. They're about 5 or 6 inches from the top, and I think that detracts from growing because the sun doesn't reach the carrot or the parsnip, whatever I'm growing in them. So what I need to do is take out the soil, which is a soil sand mix, put in some compost from my own compost bays, and then put the soil back in, which will bring it up near the top of the barrels or the drums, and will then allow the sun to get at the parsnips I'm growing there. So that's the job I've got today, so to take all the soil out, put in some allotment compost, put the soil back in, and sow my chitted parsnip seeds that I've brought with me today from the airing cupboard. The one that got away. Well, it's taken a couple of hours, but job done. Except this M1, I ran out of chitted parsnip seeds. So there's only 3 of them sown, but in a week's time I'll have chitted some more, and then they'll all be done. And that's all my parsnips for the year. John's been here, and Simon's been here. He's been rotivating. He's got one of these really big rotivators, and he's been rotivating his plot. So I've had some company, and I did everything. You know, I didn't have a lot to do, and I spent a lot of time. I didn't film it because it's boring, but with a trowel and a bucket, just going around the edges of the beds, digging out the couch grass and the weeds. Yeah, so everything's tip top, and I should just say that the letter that isn't in any of the state names is Q, and I've been racking my brains. It's just a question I saw online, and that was the answer. And of course, I don't have a smartphone, so I can't look it up. But I'm wondering which state's got a Z in it. Maybe you know. I don't know. But the answer was Q. And another little story before I go, to add on to the Nahani bit that I did in my last video, the Nahani River in Canada. When we finished, after the 2 weeks, we came out to a place called Nahani Butte, which was a First Nations settlement, and then we stayed overnight there, and then we canoed on down the Mackenzie River. The Nahani flowed out into the Mackenzie River. So we paddled for a day down the Mackenzie River and came to a campsite, and that was where we were being picked up. And we stayed there overnight, and in the morning we had a time to be picked up to get back to the airfield at Fort Simpson, I believe, to fly on and reverse the trip going home. And we pre-booked a taxi, and of course the taxi had to be able to pick up all our gear, the canoes, so it had a trailer and so on. Anyway, the time came, we packed up our camp, all our stuff was in our bags, and we were at the reception of the campsite ready to be picked up. No taxi, and we waited over an hour, and we thought this is getting a bit tight now for the flight. So we went in and spoke to the chap who ran the campsite, and he very kindly agreed to get his pickup truck. A couple of us would have to sit in the back of it with all the luggage, but that was fine. Anyway, as we were loading up his pickup truck, the taxi turned up, which was a minibus with a trailer, and the young man was very apologetic, and we said, look, we're really concerned we're going to miss the flight. And he said, don't worry, you will not miss the flight, I guarantee it. So, you know, we didn't totally believe him, but anyway, we packed up and off we went. We drove, eventually, it was quite a long drive, and we got to the airfield where we were going to fly from, and he pulled up in front of this small building. I wouldn't say it was a terminal, but anyway, there were a couple of trolley things there, and he helped us load them onto the trolley, which was very kind, and he said, you know, have a good flight, and he walked round the back of the building, and we walked in the front door, and we went up to the check-in desk, and he came through the back of the building and he checked us in. And you know, the bags weren't weighed or anything. It was only a tiny little plane. I think it was a 10-seater or something. So he took the trolleys out, and when the time came for the flight, he walked us out across the runway with the trolleys, and he loaded the bags in the back of this plane. And then we got on the plane, and he followed us on the plane, and he had the manifest and the list of all the passengers. He talked to the pilot. So no wonder he knew we wouldn't miss the flight. He was loading it. Anyway, like I say, I won't be back now for 3 weeks. And when I do come back, I'm hoping to have a little bit of footage of both the wedding and our weekend on Exmoor with Charlotte and Carl. I'm not sure how I'll manage it, because I'm certainly not filming anything myself on the day. I'm going to enjoy it for the memory that it will be. But anyway, we'll see what happens. So, until I see you again, take care, look after yourselves, and bye for now.